there?
We are all telework. We have been for a few good weeks now. I think it was a lot of prudent moves by our leadership to get us, out of the office. The building's still open. They've deep cleaned it a few times, but you're really supposed to go in there if you forgot something that you didn't bring home with you. I mean, DC is under a shutdown, as is Virginia, out where I live. But no, I think talking with a lot of my colleagues, almost all of them, in fact, this is the busiest we've ever been. Because obviously there's a shortage of information. People just have so many questions, so many issues are springing up, and people candidly probably have a little bit more time, right? Because you're not commuting to work, you're not going out to lunch or something along those lines. So there's a lot happening, and I spend most of my time, a good chunk of my time, on the Hill with the administration, talking with them, and they're busy as well too. I mean, it's just, like you said, everyone's adapted to this new dynamic. But I think we've been in a really good spot. We have division check-ins, full team check-ins, virtual happy hours, contests, all that kind of fun stuff to keep the morale up, but also help us adapt, to this new, work environment, this new ecosystem that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, we're doing the same with obviously we have a much smaller staff than the U.S. Chamber, but our staff, we have a huddle every morning at 9 o'clock via Zoom. And I think that really helps to stay connected and engaged, and, just to see people and to see your colleagues. And we're actually going to be doing a staff happy hour tomorrow, just to, like you said, just to stay connected during these times. And
got to check in on people, make sure they have everything that they need, obviously from the personal standpoint, from the work standpoint. And I hope there'll be a few silver linings that come out of all this. Hopefully the sense of community comes back. I've met more of my neighbors than I ever have, just taking my son out on a walk. It's been excellent and awesome. So maybe there will be some good positives that come out of this for all the ill that there is.
Yeah, that's what we have to focus on. Otherwise it's too much doom and gloom.
Right.
So we have about half of our attendees on, so I'm going to ask you a more specific chamber related question.
Really?
While we're getting more people online. C6s, like a Chamber of Commerce, were not included in the PPP loans. Is there any talk of being included in the next round of the CARES Act?
Every day. I mean, it's obviously something that we advocated on up to the very last minute. Certainly you guys are eligible for the employee retention credit, for the EIDL loans, missed the boat on the PPP, but it's something that we continue to advocate on heavily. And I know there's, various chambers and groups across the country are writing letters on this. They're going to be looking at, this week trying to add some additional funds. I imagine that's probably going to be a cleaner bill than most. But at the end of the month, this month, April, you're looking at, what we'll call a phase 4 bill. And there will be some corrections in there because, they do need to figure out, how is this phase 3 taking hold? How's the CARES Act working? What changes, improvements do we need to make? Do we have any shortcomings? Because it, candidly has been, a bumpy start. So I think there's a lot to learn, but yeah, right now, not eligible for PPP, but something we continue to press on.
Sounds good. Anything that we can do from our end too? I know that's, we'll talk with our congressman and
That's excellent. That's what we need. And, I think, there's been, talk about the different, the structures and who qualifies as C6. I think it is kind of really, separating chambers from the pack, right? Because there's a lot of folks that organize as C6 that just are not, our local chamber.
Right. It's a little different.
Right.
So I see we've got about 56 attendees on right now, 57, 58. They're growing in number. So I guess I'll wait just a tad bit longer. Maybe we get to like about 70 and I can go over some of the guidelines. We are going to be recording this. So this is those who missed some of that information, we can always go back, and of course we'll put the date on it because things are changing ever rapidly. So
Yeah.
information that you're providing today, maybe might be a little bit different moving forward. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead. I guess we'll go ahead and get started just for sake of time because it's 12:05 and I want to make sure that we're aware of, respectful of your time as well as the other attendees. And I think they'll be popping in. So, couple of things just for those of you who I don't know. I'm president of the McKinney Chamber of Commerce and just want to say welcome to our webinar today. And want to acknowledge that we all know that these are tough times right now. We're hearing from our businesses. In fact, our staff is calling one by one. We have over 1,400 members, so they're calling each of our members. So if you haven't gotten a call yet, I'm sure you will be getting a call just to check in and see how you're doing and to understand what challenges you have and what resources we can provide that would be of benefit, whether it's connecting you with information like what we're doing today, to helping tell your story or connect you to a financial organization to help you with loans or talking to your landlord. We've got all kinds of different resources based on the information that we have gotten feedback from. So that a lot of that information is available online. If you go to mckinneychamber.com on our homepage, there's a link, you'll see it right away, click on it, lots of information. But reach out to us too, as we're trying to reach out one by one. We're answering that our doors are closed. I am in the office today, I'm the only one. Just want to make sure I had good internet capabilities during this webinar. But we're still answering the phones and answering emails and just wanting to hear from you during this time. So please keep us, just keep communicating with us. I think that's the most important thing that we need to do during this time. The other thing I want to talk about, for today's webinar, I mentioned earlier that we are recording. So it's a little bit different. If you've been in Zoom meetings, you don't see your face up on the screen. So as an attendee, so we'll be spotlighting our featured speaker today. But we are going to be recording. If you do have any technical issues, I've got Kathy Blank helping me behind the scenes. And so just go in the chat and make sure that you put any questions that you might have, and she can help you troubleshoot. The other thing is that I think Chris has said we can do some Q&A towards the end. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you'll click that and put your questions in, we'll figure out the best way. Chris, if you want to read those or if you want me to read them to you, however we want to handle that, when we get that portion, we can do that. And then Chris, do you see in the bottom of your screen the ability to share your screen?
I do.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet to introduce Chris to everybody, and then I'm going to spotlight him, if I can find the button, and we'll get going on his presentation, and then of course move along with the questions. So just a short intro about Chris. Chris Denzel is the Senior Director for International Policy in the International Division at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and is responsible for promoting the Chamber's international trade and investment agenda, and apparently is also an SBA or CARES Act rookie expert in this. So Chris, I'm gonna kind of give it to you to move forward.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Can you all see the slides? Did I do this correctly?
Let's see, let me see in chat real fast because everybody's muted. Yeah, not yet. I'm hearing no. Let's see if there's something. Oh, here we go.
How about now? Does that work for y'all?
I see it. Do others? Yes, I'm seeing yeses.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for having me on today. Yes, I do typically work on trade and investment policy, but these are obviously novel times. So I've been deputized to talk about the Federal CARES Act. Really what I want to do today is just provide as much information as I can, try to answer as many questions as I can. If I don't have the answers to the questions, I'll find them for you. I understand everyone's business circumstances are different and unique. So just want to make sure that you have the best information, but you're also talking with your banks, with your lenders, with your CPAs and everyone else, just to make sure that you're using the programs that are available in the best, most efficient manner. So with that, we're going to talk about the Federal CARES Act today. So this was the third coronavirus bill that was passed by Congress. The first two, we won't touch on a whole lot. We'll touch on the second one towards the end, insofar as it deals with paid sick leave and FMLA provisions. So if you look at the top line bullet there, the package was $2.2 trillion. This was the largest federal economic stimulus package our country has ever seen. And this is referred to phase 3. I'll either call it phase 3 or CARES Act while I'm talking until we get to the bottom part. As I mentioned, we'll talk about the second bill. So inside the bill, there was provisions for individuals, but for also businesses, large, medium, and small. We'll spend the most time talking about the small businesses today. Just real quickly on some of these individual provisions here. As you can see, probably the part that's gotten the most attention are the direct payments, right? The cash, or in the form of a check. That's $1,200 for individual, $2,400 if you file jointly, plus $500 for each additional child. And this is phased out for incomes over $7,500 if you file individually, and then $150,000 if you file jointly. Another provision of the CARES Act on the individual side was it did expand unemployment. And these are, if folks find themselves unemployed, obviously only related to COVID-19. People are eligible for an additional $600 per week, and that's on top of what state and local UI is already providing. All folks have to be due for eligible this. They just have to live in a state that opts in for it. Federal government's covering its share. And, I think we tend to get some questions here about unemployment insurance and, well, if there is going to be this additional benefit, does this incentivize folks not to work? I know this was highlighted in the Wall Street Journal. So this benefit, much like UIs, this additional benefit, much like regular UI, is only available to folks. So, if folks are put off of work, work reopens, they call, you're available, you're able to work, and you decide not to, obviously this is not going to apply. You're not going to be eligible for this enhanced benefit. So the major provisions for employers. So we'll go over, like I said, provisions that are available for all employers, provisions that are available for large, medium-sized employers, and we'll spend the most time down there at the bottom, talking about small businesses, the self-employed, independent contractors, and nonprofits. So first out of the gate here, what's available to all employers? They included a provision on payroll taxes, right? So, obviously this is, when you cut the check to your employee, there's your contribution, there's the employee's contribution. And what they've allowed folks to do is to delay payment of the employer payroll taxes, right? The 6.2% of Social Security. And you can delay that, as effective beginning of 2021, meaning that, between now and then January of 2021. 50% of what was due will be due at the end of next year, 2021, and then the other remaining 50% would be due at the end of 2022. And we'll talk a lot about these new programs, what's available, the interplay, and you can see from that last bullet there, importantly, this doesn't apply to employers that elect to use the Paycheck Protection program. And when Congress was drafting this bill, they made that Paycheck Protection program the most favorable, and that's where we'll spend a lot of our time today. Some other tax changes that you can see there in the bottom half of the slide here, talking about net operating losses. Generally, those can be carried back for 5 years, 18, 19, 20 now included. This extends now to pass-throughs and sole proprietors. You can accelerate your recovery of alternative minimum tax. I don't know how many people that actually applies to. Important provision here, though, down there at the bottom when we're talking about interest deductibility, right? These qualified improvement property fix provisions, right? And what this was is that, let's say for a retail shop or for a restaurant that made improvements over the last couple of years, they can accelerate the recovery of that because, what these provisions are really looking at is improving the liquidity situation for businesses, right, folks? I think we all understand that without customers, people are having liquidity issues. So it's not so much about reducing the overall tax burden as it is trying to get more money back into the system. Okay, so another provision, this was new in the CARES Act. This is the employee retention credit. And this was a late addition to the bill, so it hasn't necessarily received a whole lot of attention. But it's in there, so obviously, we're going to chat about it here for a quick second. So this applies to businesses employers, but also nonprofits that were either partially or fully shut down as a result of the coronavirus. And what this means is, either they saw a 50% drop in gross receipts, they were shut down, and this is compared to the prior years here. So this is obviously for folks that have shut down and lost revenue. How much is it worth? It comes in the form of a refundable tax credit. That's 50% of the wages paid by the employer, up to $10,000 per employee. And there are some important provisions here that deal with the size of business. And these are points 3 and 4. So employers with more than 100 employees, it applies to all employees not providing services. So if you have more than 100 employees, but you have folks teleworking, they don't count for these purposes. If you have less than 100 employees, it applies to all employees that are eligible during the pay period. And this, is one of, a kind of a unique portion of the bill that we'll see in a couple places where they draw some distinctions between size of business, but also the ability for employees to continue to provide services away from the office if they have the option and the ability to telework, for example. And once again, much like we were talking about with the payroll tax provision, employers are not eligible to use this program if they receive a Paycheck Protection Program loan. And what they are trying to do, and I think there's going to be some more guidance coming out on this, is they're going to try and expedite this refundable tax credit, just so that way there can be additional liquidity. So for the mid and larger size employers, I won't spend too much time on this one, but if folks want to follow up separately, I'm happy to do that. So this is, the provisions that folks might have heard about, related to the airline industry, to the cruise industry and others, or sorry, not the cruise industry, but national security outfits like Boeing that provide essential national security services. And these was about $454 billion in loan guarantees and these federal credit reserve facilities that can, additionally be leveraged over the $4 trillion mark. There are some restrictions on these dealing with executive compensation, ability to purchase or to execute stock buyback programs. And these are going to come through the Federal Reserve. But I'm going to move on from this one to get to here. All right, so this is where we'll spend most of our time talking today about small businesses, the self-employed, independent contractors, and nonprofits. So the hallmark of this program, and really what I think Congress intends most folks to want, to drive them towards, is the Paycheck Protection Program. And this is about $350 billion in loans for small businesses. And if you've been watching the news, Congress and the administration just yesterday are talking about trying to shore up this program with additional funds this week. And this is because it's received a lot of attention. A lot of folks are applying, which is good. This is what Congress intended, but it was also first come, first serve. That's not to say they've tapped into the full $350 billion as it is right now, but they're anticipating significant demand for this program. So Congress is looking this week to put, I believe, another $250 billion into this program. And this went online last Friday for small businesses, and it comes online, I believe, this Friday for independent contractors, self-employed, and others. There's varying reports on the number of applications that have gone out the door, the total amount of the dollars that are being sought. There's also varying degrees of success in executing these loans, just because they did have some issues with the system. This is rapidly evolving. Department of Treasury, actually released a new frequently asked questions document yesterday that does provide some clarity on some of the FAQs, that people have been asking because, this CARES Act, right, this phase 3 was considered in a very short amount of time on congressional standards. And then there was only about a week to implement it. So this is really on a rolling basis. But, generally the idea here is to have as many lenders as possible participate, to allow folks to get their applications in the morning and then hopefully see some relief in that evening, almost same day if possible. So way about thinking about this, who's eligible, right? So if you're generally qualified for an SBA program, you're going to be eligible under this. But this also included folks like independent contractors and the self-employed who may have previously not been eligible for small business SBA programs. It also includes hotel and restaurant folks. And an important provision on this is that it's looking at about your situation on a per location basis. So typically, restaurant and hotels, part of chain, franchise, whatever the case may be, they would have more than 500 employees. they wouldn't be eligible. But that's not the case for the Paycheck Protection Program. They're looking at it on a location basis. So as you can see, small businesses, generally less than 500, 501c3, self-employed, sole proprietors, and independent contractors are eligible for this program. So how much can you borrow? So loans are equal to the lesser of, about 2.5 months of your average payroll, or $10 million. And there's a calculation that goes into this. And I encourage folks to check out our website. I don't know if you all have shared it, but we put together a 4-page guide that will do a much better job explaining how you calculate your costs and what your total loan can be. And we continue to update that based upon the information that's coming out of the administration. Where do you get these loans? Local and national lenders. So you don't go to the SBA for these. We'll talk about the next program we'll talk about is where you do go to the SBA. But for these, it should be folks that you've worked with in the past, or folks that have elected to be part of this program. If you've worked in the past with the SBA Section 7A lender, they automatically qualify. And as I mentioned, the idea here is to get as many lenders online as possible. So you see there are minimum requirements to get these loans, for example, no collateral, no personal guarantee. And really what they want to do here is keep people on the payroll, right? So, the way to think about this is, if you look at the bill, it's laid out. So you take 8 weeks of your expenses after the date of the origination of the loan, and you get to tally everything up that you spent on payroll, utilities, mortgage for the business, and some other qualified business expenses. And then what you do is, so these loans get converted into a grant, so you get the forgiveness, and then you see those at the bottom there. But this loan forgiveness is reduced proportionally if you start reducing the number of full-time employees or equivalents. And there's a phase out here. There's a cap on $10,000 of payroll is the only thing that can count, towards your payroll towards the payroll input of this calculation. We've gotten some questions about, what if I'm not essential? What if my state or local, applicable law doesn't allow us to operate? That doesn't matter for the purposes of this. It's once you get the loan, do you bring folks back on the payroll? Do you keep them through June 30th? Do you bring them back on within 30 days after you get the loan? So this is the program that's gotten the most attention. It's had the most hiccups. I know they're continuing to work through it. There has been some additional guidance that has come out on this. Originally, the loan rate was set at 0.5%. They bumped that up to 1%. Businesses are required to use 75% of the loans on payroll, which obviously that reduces how much you can use to qualify on things like mortgage or utilities, for example. And they've sought to simplify the paperwork. I took a look at the application. There has been some changes, some tweaks made to it, but certainly encourage you to use the guide that the chamber has put out. You'll see it right here. This is page 1. So we have guides not only on these loans, but also the SBA disaster loans I'll talk about, as well as a few other provisions in the bill. And like I mentioned, we are constantly updating this because it is an evolving situation. We want to make sure that you all have the best information available. So moving on here. So the next provision, SBA economic injury disaster loans, these EIDL loans. So if you may be familiar with these, if there's ever been a tornado or a fire or flood or something along those lines, that's what these loans are. These are available to small businesses, nonprofits, local chambers with fewer than 500 employees, also sole proprietors and independent contractors. So this is an actual loan, unlike the previous program that we talked about that converts into a grant. And generally you can borrow up to $2 million in working capital over a 30-year term. 3 3/4 is the interest rate, 2 3/4 for nonprofits. Payments are deferred up to 1 year, so you don't have to immediately begin repaying these. They're based upon credit scores, and no tax returns are required. As you see there, you can get up to $200,000 without a personal guarantee. No collateral for $25,000 or less if that's what you're seeking. And they're trying to move away from using real estate as security for these. So one new provision down there at the bottom you'll see is this $10,000 emergency grant. So this was a new provision of the CARES Act, and this is meant to obviously within 3 days provide up to $10,000 in emergency dollars. And the interesting, unique part about this is if you apply for one of these EIDL loans, but you also seek the emergency grant, you get the emergency grant, but you're denied the EIDL loan, you do not have to repay. that $10,000. And much like all the other programs, there are some interactions with the Paycheck Protection program that we talked about. And this would happen, let's say, if you applied for an EIDL loan, for example, before the Paycheck Protection program came online, that you could end up with both. And there's provisions, obviously, to prevent double dipping. If you do get that $10,000 grant, you can't take that off the forgiveness of the Paycheck Protection program, for example. So with these, unlike the previous program, these you do go through the SBA to apply for. So you don't go to your local bank or a national lender. You do go to the SBA directly for these. All right, moving on. So we're going to jump back now to the second coronavirus bill that was passed, the Families First Act. And we'll talk about paid sick leave, but then also FMLA new requirements. So in the second coronavirus bill, the phase 2 bill, there were provisions related to paid sick leave. And that's, anyone with less than 500 employees are required to now provide 10 days of paid sick leave if it's related to the coronavirus. And as you see on that second bullet point there, this sick leave can be taken if folks unfortunately get ill, if they're quarantined to exposure, if they have to take care of a sick or quarantined family member, or if they're taking care of their child because of a daycare or a school closure. Leave is paid at the regular employment rate, the wage, with a maximum cap of $511 per day if you're taking care of yourself because you are ill, or at 2/3 the rate if you're taking care of a family member, for example. This additional benefit is obviously on top of what other leave the employer provides that's applicable to state and local law. And this part is going to be reimbursed by the federal government. So there are some exemptions for folks with less than 50 employees, as you see down there at that second to last point. And the exemption is that this is not provided, if you're caring for a kid whose school is closed, unless that leave threatens the viability of the business. And as a general matter, paid sick leave isn't available to folks who can telework and stagger their hours, for example. All right, almost at the end here, paid FMLA. So this was also, as I mentioned, from the phase 2 bill. That's the Family Medical Leave Act for those that are not familiar. It's a law that generally provides 12 weeks of unpaid leave. And so what the bill did is, for employers with less than 500, they're required to provide 10 weeks of paid FMLA leave if an employee needs to take care of a child because of a school or a daycare closure. So you can already start to see the interactions with the previous slide that we talked about with that paid sick leave. This is, just the same because it's for the care of a child. This is paid at 2/3 of the maximum rate, 2/3 of the wage, with a maximum of $200 for $10,000 in the aggregate. And this, once again, is also in addition to any leave that the employer already provides. Federal government's picking up the tab on this one as well. You can see those exemptions, and then obviously, once again, if folks can telework, this is generally not available. This is generally not available to those individuals. We made it through. To get more information, obviously our website. We're constantly hosting virtual town halls on Fridays, I believe it is, for small business. We're also updating our guides, as we mentioned, just to reflect the latest that's coming out of the administration, because this is moving day to day. And as I mentioned, I know that there are a lot of questions out there. There are additional intricacies to these programs that people need to be cognizant of. So obviously just want to reiterate my message to talk with your lenders, talk with your CPAs about your unique circumstances, so you're getting so you're applying the programs in the best way that makes sense for your business. And with that, I'm happy to try and take some questions here.
All right, so we've got several questions, and one thing I do want to just kind of piggyback on that you mentioned, Chris, about talking to your lenders. We have a list of our chamber members that are financial institutions that are doing processing these loans, and so
Awesome.
encourage you to take a look at that. That's on our resource page. They're knowledgeable in this, and I think that would be a great start if you don't already have a relationship with a banker. Okay, so a couple of questions. So I got one. It says we are a 501c3, but all of our staff are volunteer or 1099 contractors. Is there going to be something we can do to still qualify for assistance with rent and utilities? from what our bank said, the 1099 contractors will be able to apply for a self-employees relief in the next round.
Right. Yeah. So so the 1099s I see should apply in the next round, and I believe that this should qualify for assistance with rent utilities. But talk with your local lender. Maybe it makes sense to take out an idle loan. I don't know. I haven't run into this particular circumstance before, but I know that that bottom part is correct because that was just clarified up by the Treasury Department in their FAQ document that I mentioned they released. And I'm happy to send that over.
That would be great. And by the way, the information that the U.S. Chamber has been sending us has been, well, we're popping that on our website as well. It's been very helpful to kind of break down some of the complexities for our members. Okay, so another question. We have hourly employees. We issue a 1099. They work for us entire year. Do we need to pay them every week to get SBA loan without issue?
I'm going to defer to the FAQ on this one because I know that this was answered. So I'm going to, when I send you that, this question of seasonal but hourly was addressed, I believe. And I don't want to speak out of school on it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Another one. So regarding the PPP, how does an owner's compensation and an S Corp factor into the calculations since their total compensation is split between payroll and supplementary dividends?
I believe it's just a $100,000 cap, up to $100,000.
Okay. And second, what options are available to a business for the PPP loan when banks are only working with their own customers and some banks, i.e. Capital One, are yet to open options for the PPP?
Right. So you mentioned that you have a list of local lenders that are part of this program. The Small Business Administration also has a portal as well on their CV COVID-19 webpage that you plug in your zip code, and that takes you to folks that have applied to be a lender in this program and have been approved.
Okay. All right. I've got another one from a salon owner who rents space to other cosmetologists and massage therapists. We are mandatorily closed. Would the PPP be the correct loan for me?
Yeah, I mean, not knowing all the circumstances here, Shannon, I think so, right? Because when we talk about the PPP loans, it's not, are you bringing your folks back to work, right? Obviously, you can't because you're mandatorily closed. It's once you get that loan, what do you do after that, right? So generally within 30 days, if you bring your folks back, if you continue to pay them through June 30th, then the PPP would be probably the program for you.
Okay. All right, so another one, we submitted for EIDL on 3/21 and the $10,000 grant on the 24th and no response from SBA and no way to check the status. I hear money is being sent, but I feel lonely.
Yeah, I've actually heard this from a few other folks
Yeah.
that, unfortunately, even like longer delays on EIDL. It's something that we keep pinging SBA on. I haven't gotten a clear-cut answer back on that. But if I do get something back on that, I will let you know. But, unfortunately, I have heard that from other people.
Yeah. Okay, so another question. I have 2 locations of a franchise business, but they are each their own separate legal entities. I can apply for PPP EIDL for each business, correct?
That's my understanding, Sarah. But obviously just double check that with your lender.
Okay.
It should be, for the purpose of the PPP, it was on a per location basis.
Okay. Another question. My husband and I are self-employed and pay ourselves from what is left over after all business expenses are paid. For the PPP, the bank is asking for proof of payroll. Since we don't pay ourselves through W-2, what documentation can I use as proof of our payments to ourselves as well as our health premiums? We have not yet filed our 2019 tax return.
Oh boy, I haven't gotten this question yet. I'm gonna need to take that one back to the team.
Okay. Another one regarding the EIDL loan. What is the expected time frame? I applied via SBA site back on 3/30. Have a confirmation number, but not have been able to hear back. So I guess it's kind of the same question.
Yeah, I'll provide any guidance that I get back on that one. At least I just haven't.
Yeah.
Back at the moment. Which is unfortunately an awful answer, right? I wish
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
clarity on this, right? Because that was the whole point of the CARES Act, was to have these emergency loans available within 3 days.
Yes. So we are a single member LLC and we take member draws. Does that still work with the PPP, and how is it calculated?
I'm not familiar with this particular circumstance, Jacob. I would ask the lender on that one. I haven't read anything on that.
Okay, so another one, and I'm sorry, I'm reading this as I go, so some of these are duplicates, I apologize. How long are they taking to get back to you on the idle loan? I applied March 30th and have an application number. I guess that's the same, it's another duplicate question, because again, we don't know yet, right?
Yeah, no, I'll track that down. And then the one above it, is there anywhere that we calculate rent costs on the PPP app? Yes, take a look at our guide. It's included in how you tabulate what you want your total to be.
Okay, so you just answered the one on the rent one, right? Okay. So for healthcare calculations on the PPP loan, do we include all 2019 costs or just employer portion?
I believe it's just the employer portion. I think it's just the employer portion. I believe that's covered in our guide.
Okay, so I think we've kind of talked about this question before, but want to make sure I ask it in case there's a different take. We have heard different takes on small businesses with owners who are not employees. Will their distributions be included in the PPP calculation? This is how they live.
Yeah, I will try to get a firmer answer on this.
Got it.
Just because I honestly I haven't been asked this yet.
Another one is it true that the $10,000 grant on the idle has changed to $1,000 per employee?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah,
but that's not to say that it hasn't happened. I just haven't heard it myself. But I think that would, I don't know, require a statutorial change. I'm not sure.
So another question I think we've been getting quite a bit of is, again, knowing when, it's supposed to be in 3 business days that you would know if your update on that, on your idle loan for the $10,000 emergency grant. So the question is, how can we get a status update? So again, we'll just have to keep checking, right?
I'm gonna call our guy, Tom Sullivan, who's head of our small business program, and ask him this. Ask him what his latest conversations have been on this.
Okay. So to apply for the grant, do I need to go to my local bank or just apply to SBA.gov?
For the PPP, or to apply for the idle?
Doesn't not specify.
Yeah, the PPP program, you go to a local or national lender, and I see that's Jennifer's question. And you can either use someone that you currently have business with, or you can use someone else. For the idle, the disaster loan, and that $10,000, then you go to the SBA to apply for that.
Okay, and then this one is, I'm an independent contractor. I'm struggling with how to actually apply for the SBA PPP. I have several accounts with my bank, but you can only apply online if you have a business account. None of my accounts are tagged business.
I would talk to your lender about that. Otherwise, you may have to look at a different option.
Okay. Madison, I think we already answered your question. And we'll get back to you. Let's see, Brian. Regarding the form for the idle loan, is it just one application for the initial $10,000 emergency grant as well as the long-term loan, or are there 2 different forms?
Admittedly, I haven't looked at the idle loan application, but there are some folks that obviously clearly have applied for that. So if anyone wants to chime in and help answer that question for Brian, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. There was another question that was also related to that, the same question from another person. If applying for the PPP under a partnership, Is it possible to add payroll costs from the partner who is an S Corp?
That's beyond my depth. I'm gonna have to take that one back.
Yeah. How long does the paycheck protection last?
So generally, this is meant to be a bridge for the next couple of months, right? And you know, for the PPP program, they're looking at, are you paying your employees through June 30th of this year?
Okay, so another one, Chris mentioned Friday for the self-employed part coming online. I heard that Friday was the deadline. Please clarify.
Master Judge Carpet. Let me double check on that, but I was under the impression that this past Friday was when it came online for small businesses and it was coming online for other folks later. But I'll double check on that for you.
Okay, so we are a 501c3 school, but many of our families are unable to pay their tuition right now, but we do not want to stop offering classes to our students. If a contractor applies for the PPP, can they continue working without pay? I know with unemployment, you could not continue working.
Well, if the contractor applies for the PPP, continue working without pay. I mean, I think so. I mean, if they apply for the PPP, then they're seeking funds, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any prohibition on, you know, if Angie, if the question is, you know, can folks continue to work without pay while the PPP is being processed? I think generally that answer would be yes.
Okay. I am an independent contractor, truck driver working for a corporation. My business is an LLC S Corp. My wife and I are the only two W-2 employees. Would a PPP loan be best for us?
I imagine so, right? Because I mean, that's certainly, you know, generally they expanded the eligibility for the ICs. And this is a big point of debate and contention in Congress, right? Certainly, you know, with the gig economy and in other parts of the economy. I don't want to give you a firm answer, Ron, because I certainly want you to talk to your lender about all your options, but they made the PPP program the most favorable.
Let's see. Are these questions and answers going to be posted somewhere? So I think some of the ones that we're going to get back to people on, definitely we can do that. The webinar is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to the webinar. So that's one of the questions that was asked. To the single member, you are considered self-employed for tax purposes. So are you probably considered the same for this?
Yes, I think so.
Is the guide being referred to located at uschamber.com/SB loans?
Yeah, it should be, or uschamber.com/CO. It's our small business program. And they're constantly doing new blog posts as well to supplement the guides that we've put together.
Great. And we will continue to monitor the U.S. Chamber's guides they have online and link those to our website as well. So just a FYI for everybody who's looking. I'm trying to run through some of these questions. I'm sorry. Okay, so Angie's, I guess, replying to somebody. You check the box on the app on the EIDL loan that you want the $10,000 grant. So it sounds like it's incorporated with the EIDL loan application is what I'm understanding from one of our members. Can I apply for the PPP without having any employees? My wife and I operate and run our business.
Yeah, PPP is for the self-employed.
Yep. Okay. My wife and I own a promotional products business that has no other employees. We work out of the house, but business has come to a standstill. Do we qualify for a loan grant? Where do we find the proper application?
I would ask you to speak with your lender about that one. Just answer to qualify.
Yeah, sounds like we have a lot of very similar, but maybe like one slight variance, right? In some questions.
Yeah, and I'll work to, like I said, I'll work to get you the answers on these. And if folks have additional questions, I'm happy to run those down as well.
And this is all great information too, by the way, all these questions that you're asking, because we will continue to work with the U.S. Chamber to try to get some information, as well as with our, in a lot of our bankers. I know we've got a lot of financial people who are online right now, and they've been working nonstop trying to process these loans. And so we will also work with them to try to get more information out to our members as we move forward. So I really appreciate everybody's questions today. I think there may have been one more, and I think it's a very similar question about being a sole owner and only employee on an LLC. I have reduced income, but still have some. Do I qualify for assistance?
I believe the PPP,
Yeah.
It wasn't eligible for SOL. But you can also use some of the other programs I mentioned, which is why you gotta holistically take a look at this.
Yes. Well, very good. I think we've run through all of the questions. And then Chris, one of the questions I did have was, can we share your slides? Is that possible?
Yeah, I can send those your way if you don't already have them.
Perfect. Yeah, if you could send them, I don't have them, but if you can send them my way, we'll not only share.
I'll get you that. I'll get you the Treasury FAQs, and then I'll run down some of these commonly asked questions as well.
That's perfect. That'd be great. So we'll include that on our website, and we'll follow up with all the attendees who have been online as well.
Excellent.
So, Chris, I really appreciate your time today. I know you're swamped, you're busy. But we appreciate the U.S. Chamber, all the work that you're doing to try to help support small businesses and chambers during this time, and appreciate the partnership and being willing to answer as many questions as you can. I know this has been a quick rollout of the CARES Act, and it's every day kind of learning something new and all the different nuances within that. So we appreciate your time and effort to help as we all try to support each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'll try and get you as many answers as I can, if not all of these answers. Yeah, it's been a fast moving process. I've come up to speed myself, so just really appreciate everyone taking the time today and for all the questions. Don't tell anyone else this, some of your neighbors, but this is the best slate of questions I've seen. So I really appreciate the interaction today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone stay safe. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, Chris. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.